Good afternoon. We're just going to check and make sure. Matthew, I think you can hear us in the Zoom webinar?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay, so
Good afternoon.
Chair Crandall will be ready to begin on time.
I have a special.
Okay, welcome back from the lunch break. It's 1:05 as planned, and so we'll move on to our next department budget summary and give the floor over to Stephen.
So next budget unit is Public Safety Facilities, budget unit 1785, found on page D49, and their requested appropriations equal $6,335,156. And I'll turn it over to the sheriff.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Thank you, Board, for your time today. All the thank yous that are set to go out there. I have 21 budget units, so I'm going to try to be concise and be respectful of everybody's time and make sure there's enough time for the other departments to be heard. But I do want to take some time to thank Mary Beth Strong, my finance manager, and Nancy McCarrick, who was here earlier this morning, for all their hard work, as well as the staff from the county admin office, Stephen Carter, the auditor's office. There's a lot of moving parts that go in, and I know you hear it from all department heads, the thank yous that go out, but it's truly a work of art that gets us to here, and there's a lot of moving parts that I'm grateful for. With budget unit 1785 to start us off is our public safety facilities. There's some information here that the public services director is going to want to chime in with. Lars, you'll be joining us at the table. We have three major projects that are currently underway under 1785. The first major project is a generator project for the jail, and there's going to be some a request for some additional funding that wasn't available in the budget, and due to some estimates that we got back from our bid process, and I'll leave that to Lars to explain.
Thank you. So the jail generator project currently appropriated from previous fiscal years, and what is shown in the budget book is $525,000. We have thus far we actually purchased the generator. It's en route. That's $172,000, and just about 2 weeks ago we opened bids for the construction portion of it, which includes both materials and labor. And the low bid is $507,000, factoring in some soft costs for construction management, gets to a total project cost of $704,000. Again, the appropriations are $525,000, which leaves a shortfall of $179,000. So what we are requesting, and is not included in your budget, as I don't think it is in the budget book, is a request for $225,000, which covers the shortfall of $179,000 plus a 25% contingency.
And this is within Fund 960, our budget unit 1785?
1785, correct.
And I see the look on at least one supervisor's face, like, how is it so much? If you could talk about the other bids that came in.
Absolutely, yeah. And I waited for questions to that end, but we received 4 bids, and coming to the board for a recommendation for award is forthcoming. We received 4 bids. One was non-responsive to the extent that they failed to actually include their bid. But the other 3 were all within about, I want to say it was 10 to 15%. So it's not as though they were all over the board. So when we have a number of bids, even though 3 is not extremely high number, it still indicates that that we're in a good range for the design. So the design was sufficient so that a good bid process could occur. So that, why the extreme costs? To be perfectly blunt, it's the labor market and the material costs. A couple of years ago, we had a cost estimate of about $525,000 for the whole project, and here we are now with that additional cost.
That was my question, of when was the project originally contemplated? It was a few years ago.
It was a few years ago. It was, yeah.
The reality of what's going on with that.
Absolutely. And to that point, the generator alone, we ordered it in March. It's still being fabricated, or in line to be fabricated. So we're still a little ways out from actually receiving that. So it's not fun to go up here and tell you we need more money for a project that exceeds our cost estimate, but that's the reality of the situation.
So then where's it's 250,000?
225.
Oh, 225.
So I will tell you the nuts and bolts on how that would happen, because that's probably what you would have to approve. So for budget unit 1785, we would have to increase 8122, which is operating transfer in of 525,000, and we would have to increase account 6313, which is construction in progress where it is, increase it by 525,000, and it would actually come out of budget unit 1120. It has to be general fund. So when we get to 1120, I'll ask for 8123, which is operating transfer out, to increase by 525,000. And where is the extra revenue coming from? Well, after the budget was submitted and finalized, our fund balance available actually has $2.5 million extra, because Teeter was transferred into the general fund first week of September? First week of September into June 30th. So that wasn't even in these numbers. That's what would cover.
When were you going to say that?
Well,
When you got to the sheriff's budgets.
$2.5 million, we'll cover that, plus the parks project.
the reason I haven't talked about it is, unfortunately, there's multiple items that are going to eat it up quickly.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, exactly. I figured as soon as we got there.
Two
Are
other,
we gone before we get there? Is that what you said?
two other significant projects out of 1785 are the tower and control remodel. The tower and control system is basically the control center for the jail operating facility. It's the location where all the doors are opened and closed from. It's an antiquated system. I believe it's original to the facility, and the equipment that was in there is proprietary, and the company that designed and built that equipment no longer exists. We're experiencing some failures in the system now, and so the next significant project is that remodel of the project. We're at the stage now where we're having a potential bidder walkthrough scheduled for later this week, and hoping to get bids back very soon on that.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So the way the tower now requires multiple staff to be in there to operate it?
We have two different control rooms.
Okay.
So yes, it's a post that cannot be vacated at any time. It's been staffed continuously since the jail was constructed. That room has never been empty. It can't be empty. We typically have one person assigned to it when our staffing levels are up to where they should be. We can have two people assigned so somebody can have some relief in those rooms.
Okay.
And the last, probably the largest project that we have is, of course, the former armory facility that is going to be converted to the sheriff's. I believe they refer to it as the sheriff's complex, building complex, in the opening presentation. Public Services has put out a request for bids. We had, I believe, 7 responses from architecture firms for the design, and the selection committee is meeting next week to select an architecture firm for that.
Just for some clarity on that, it's for the initial kind of programming. It's not the full design that we're looking at, but there's the distinct possibility that the same firm that does that, if they do satisfactorily, then we would continue with them. But yeah, just wanted to make sure it's not for the entirety of the design, nor is it obviously the construction. We're talking about the preliminary stages.
And that's all I have for 1785.
Go ahead, Supervisor Sabati.
I don't want to say it, but I'm still going to ask. Does that tower remodel require them to have ADA access, since it's a remodel?
It's an electronics upgrade. We're not talking about a physical remodel of the facility. So I will just confirm that because it's a wise consideration. But since we're not modifying in any of the structure, my gut tells me no because it's primarily electronics. But I'll look at that.
Okay.
How does that work with the downtime of the remodel and changing out all the equipment
Careful.
carefully?
Yeah. There's probably going to be some manual, I'm sure there's going to be at some point in time where we're going to have to open and close doors manually. So good old-fashioned lock and key. So it's, hopefully it'll be a rather quick project. We went through a smaller scale project in another part of the facility where we converted over to touchscreens, and it had fairly minimal impact on our operations. Next budget unit is 2201.
I have one quick question. The last part for the sheriff complex, which doesn't sound like you made the name, does that just cover the design, the amount that's been dedicated to that, or does it does it cover more than just the design?
I expect it will cover much more than the design, but until we know what the scope of the project is, we conceptually, have some notion of what it'll look like, but that preliminary design will help to get us where we can say plus or minus 30%. Here's what we know about the project. The further we go on design, that plus or minus goes down to 15, goes down to 10, goes down to 5. So at this stage, I would argue that no, we don't have enough in that budget or another one, I believe, to fund the entirety of the project. So I'll leave my comments there.
Mainly, I wanted to make sure that, because the design needs to happen first, I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't the entirety just for the design, because that would have been really expensive too.
Yeah, we definitely scrutinize that.
Yes.
Design costs.
Absolutely.
So before we leave 1785, Kathy brought up that I actually said 525, the whole budget amount. The actual new amount is 225,000. Sorry, so I want to make sure that is
Because that's
stated
the
properly.
addition to what was.
The addition on 225, so the 8122 would go up by 225,000. 6313 would also go up by 225,000. Sorry about that.
Hold up.
Unless there's any more questions.
New total of 750,000.
Anything else from the board on 1785?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you, Lars, I appreciate your
thank
help.
you.
Thank you. Next budget unit is Budget 2201, Sheriff Coroner. This is the budget that handles the majority of our visible operations, our patrol functions, our investigative functions, our deputy coroner and coroner functions. As far as vacancies in this unit, we currently have a total of 42 deputies assigned to it with 10 vacant positions. We're still working on our efforts, along with the board's assistance in trying our recruitment efforts to try to get operations up to speed in there. Some of the other projects that we've been working on, I mentioned in the earlier, the opening presentation, the GVRP position that was funded at 75%. GVRP stands for Gun Violence Reduction Program. We applied for a State Department of Justice grant, which funds 3/4 of a detective, as well as some equipment. The duties of that detective are to identify people that are on the armed and prohibited persons list within California that we believe to have firearms, and take steps to get those firearms off the street. We've applied for another grant, a subsequent grant. We were in the first round of awardees for that particular grant, and a second round has come up. In our second round of grant applications, we're going to ask for the other 25% of that position to be funded. And we're also asking for some additional funding to form a task force with the, in concept with the probation department contributing an officer, and then also working with the local police departments on a part-time basis to have operations to target people that are illegally in possession of firearms in the county. We also participate in the Roadmap Task Force. Previous presentation was with the Community Development Department. We're participating to the extent that we can with that. Again, some of our staffing issues that we discussed at last week's board meeting are causing us to have to take a look at that. I want to continue with that program as much as possible. We also have some positions allocated. I believe that the grant may be ending for the school resource officers, but we haven't been able to staff those due to a lack of staffing availability for those positions. We're going to continue our recruiting effort. We have a very young workforce. We have some people that do have quite a bit of experience, but in the middle of the night, the workforce that you have at the sheriff's office is fairly young and inexperienced. So we're really going to work on some in-house training, get them all up to speed and at a level that they need to be working Lake County, and provide services all hours of the day. Any questions on that?
I have a question for you. I know you've been installing some of those cameras that read license plates and all. Just kind of curious what's been efficacy for that and how that has helped in your department. I know that it's the force multiplier is what I keep hearing being used when it comes to law enforcement. How's that working for you, and do you need more?
Tremendous. Yeah, they're excellent. Matter of fact, I've submitted one of our success stories to the manufacturer who's working with our media team to put out a story on a particular investigation that we had. I'll share it here. It's not a big secret. We worked with the Highway Patrol on a hit-and-run fatality, and we were able to identify the driver through our camera system within a couple of hours based on debris found at the scene. Had we not had that, it likely would have been, if it would have been solved, best case scenario, maybe months, and more likely than not, that's a crime that would have gone completely unsolved. So they were able to identify what type of car did this based on the debris left at the scene, and we had a deputy go through and research the records, and he was able to identify a car of the same description coming into the county with no damage on its vehicle, and 30 minutes later passing another camera with damage on its vehicle. We've had several other capers where we've solved some burglaries. One of the more notable ones was a burglary where somebody left we knew that the house was burglarized between 3 and 5 in the morning, and somebody left a hot dog wrapper, and the deputy was able to he suspected that the only place that was open at 3 and 5 in the morning was a 24-hour store located nearby, so we went back and he checked the camera system, was able to develop information, and finally identified the suspect who had gone to get a hot dog before he burglarized this residence. Took the information, executed a search warrant, and cleared up multiple burglaries that occurred both in the county and within one of our cities. So a very effective system. It's probably brought some peace, at least to well, I'd say especially to the family of the young lady who was killed by the hit-and-run driver, that, quite frankly, I don't know that would have been solved without the system. So that's a long answer for, yeah, I could use some more. They're very effective, yes.
Because, and granted, it's not necessarily this specific budget item, but I know cannabis taxes, we have a lot allocated for law enforcement. I'm not seeing it being used. Other than we did use maybe about $2 million for salary coverage for all of the departments. I just want to make sure and repeat, there's money available if we can force multiply with more of that type of equipment in our community, and you say it's that helpful. Just want to make sure that I state that.
We've started tracking our successes as well as, I don't want to call them failures, but sometimes we'll use the system and it may not result in us finding something, so we've started having our deputies track when they use that system, because we know the questions are going to come up, well, like how often. The anecdotal stories are nice, but we're hopeful that we'll develop enough empirical data where we can bring forth and show somebody with a degree of certainty exactly how much we're getting to use them. But I will tell you that it's like having extra sets of eyes out there, which is exactly what it is. So far, we've had no complaints. There's an audit system that's in place to make sure people are using it properly, and we've had no complaints, no allegations of any misuse of the system. I know that's a concern for people concerned with privacy rights, but I assure you that if we do get any complaints, we'll look into it. There's a very robust auditing system that's available with it, and the fact of the matter is that the 24 or so cameras that we have are nothing. There's probably more than 24 cameras in this building. So
Right. Thank you.
Well, not to mention, you have access to the 19 in my district as
Yes.
well. And it's solely your department code enforcement has, I think I need to work with them on it, but it's just you two, and then, yeah.
Yes. It's an effective tool.
And that is continually budgeted through and funded through cannabis. So if there's more wished, we can make it happen.
All right.
Okay. Next budget unit is 2202, the Sheriff's Central Dispatch. As you all know, the primary public safety answering point, or 911 center, is operated by the Sheriff's Office within the county, staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. On average, we handle, just the Sheriff's Office handles 36,000 calls, more or less, per year, which comes out to about 100 calls of service every day just for the deputy sheriffs. We also provide deputy dispatch services for the city of Lakeport, and then on an as-needed basis for several of our partner agencies, the BLM, Forest Service, and some other agencies within the county as it's needed. Currently, our dispatch vacancy rate is, we have 5 vacant positions with 11 allocated there. We have a dispatcher that's on training right now. We had a dispatcher up until a couple months ago that was doing very well in her training, who unexpectedly had to resign employment. And again, I want to thank the board for your efforts in helping me retain the people that we do have. The staff that's up there is very, very competent, very diligent. Many of them have joined us through the various wildfire events that we've had over the years. And I can't thank them enough for the work that they do under some pretty difficult circumstances. We augment the staffing up there right now with deputy sheriffs, as your board is aware from last week's discussion. And our hope is to get our staffing levels up in the dispatch center to where we can get the deputies back out either on the streets or in investigations where they can do what their primary mission would be. Anything on 2206? Yes.
Just a quick question, since you mentioned Lakeport, I had forgotten about that. Is there any compensation that comes along with that?
Yes, we have a contract with them for services, and that is in the amount. That's why I brought her with me.
And when was the last time that we reviewed that contract?
When? Every year. We review it every year. $174,000. Anything else? Next budget unit, 22. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Or just a curiosity question. In Central Dispatch, across the country, obviously, I think we're experiencing that all the way across the board in law enforcement and Central Dispatch. Is there any technology advances in 911, that type of stuff? Because I know you give us the data on how many calls come in, but some of those calls are, someone made, my garbage can made, some of them are, some of them are very interesting, is what I will say. I know you guys probably take some of those. Is there, I just ask on technology for that.
So the number I gave you isn't the number of phone calls that come into the center, that's the number of actual incidents that
Okay.
we get dispatched to. And so those range from anywhere from a 911 misdial, somebody's got it in their pocket dial for 911 that doesn't require any response, all the way up to our most serious crimes. I don't have the number of actual phone calls that come in, but I think it's well in excess of 500,000 phone calls that come in every day. As far as technology, some of the technology that we've implemented over the years are, we have GPS units installed in our vehicles, which display the location of the patrol vehicles on the computer within the dispatch center. And that gives them the ability to dispatch the closest unit rather than asking around trying to find out who's the closest person. So that'll decrease our response time a little bit. We have the ability with what's called Next Generation 911 to receive text messages over the 911 system and respond to those. And that's been several years in the making. It was just recently implemented because not all the local regional areas, some of those calls that we get need to be transferred out either to CHP or to CAL FIRE dispatch, and we had to wait for those entities to get up to speed where they could start accepting those text 911 transfers. So there have been some technological advances. I think those are probably two of the biggest ones as far as increasing our ability to deliver those services.
Okay, just had that question. Thank you.
Thank you. 2203, Sheriff Marijuana Suppression. This is money that comes from the DEA from the DSEP program, which is Domestic Cannabis Eradication and Suppression Program. We use this for illegal marijuana cultivation. This funds a lot of the overtime that we have when we send our deputies out to eradicate illegal marijuana growing operations. The funding is not allowed to be used for any license or regulatory activities. And when the DEA decides whether or not they're going to hand out money, we don't know how long this is going to continue, this source of funding. It's been talked about that, this might not be around for the very far future, but we've been very successful, especially compared to some of our other sheriff's departments in the region in getting our money. Last year, I think it was $185,000. This year, I think we had, or $150,000 last year. This year, we got $215,000. So the DEA looks at what's going on in the particular jurisdictions when they decide how much to award, and they see that Lake County is fairly active in going after these illegal marijuana grows.
So, do you have data on how many grows you've worked on, illegal grows or mitigated, or?
I have it. I don't have it with me today. I can get it to you. I will answer that question for you.
Thanks.
And they're pretty accurate down to the number of plants
The
that they
number of
pull.
plants.
They track them very diligently, so.
And you probably heard earlier what I was talking about with the Cannabis Ad Hoc Committee with RCRC. Counties that I was talking with, of course, they all have the same issues, especially the counties that don't even allow the cannabis permitted, and it's all illicit grows, their issues, so more to come later.
Yeah, it's, the tactics have really changed since legalization. We don't have the grows that are way out in the national forest nearly as much as we used to. They're almost all within our communities and much closer. Quite frankly, the penalties for getting caught are not very burdensome for people.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Budget Unit 2204, Sheriff Court Security. Of course, one of the tasks of the sheriff is to provide bailiff services, court security in the courthouses. This budget unit provides funding for that service. The unit is staffed with a combination of a permanent full-time sergeant supervisor, a couple of full-time deputies, and we're augmented by extra help retired annuitants in this unit.
I don't see any, oh, there we go, we got one.
For some reason, it's not popping up. Just a quick question. There's a huge increase both in revenue and expenditure. Just kind of curious if there's reasons behind that.
Classic homestead, it's fully funded through court security.
I'm just going to repeat what she tells me. That's largely a result of the implementation of the class and comp study, and it's funded through court security sources.
So basically, this is state funds that comes through your department that eventually gets used for the security. Gotcha.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2205, Sheriff Marine Patrol. The money that comes into this budget is through the Department of Boating and Waterways grant. It provides for our Marine Patrol services out on the lake. It's staffed year-round by a full-time sergeant, and he is augmented with extra help retired annuitant deputy sheriffs during the summer months, a little bit before Memorial Day and then a little bit after Labor Day. The Boat Patrol actually cut back quite a bit on their staffing this year due to the lake levels being so low and a lack of activity on the lake. But this unit also enforces the county's quagga mussel and invasive species ordinance.
That's who I was about to.
So you've always, typically you've had two positions there and one was unfunded and now it became funded. Are you actively pursuing to fill that position, or depending on the status of the lake and things like that and the need?
We use the funding from one equivalent full-time employee to divvy up amongst the retired annuitants during the busy season.
Okay. And very much appreciated, especially around the 4th of July where you're going to get large quantities of people on the lake. And
They get called out at all hours, all year round for different things. Sometimes it's, well, when we get some big storm events, it'll be boats that get knocked loose from the docks or debris that gets washed out there in the middle of the lake. So they try to be helpful with getting that stuff out of there so we don't have accidents. Anything else on that? 2206, Sheriff, Rural and Small Counties. This budget unit receives funding through, I can't remember, AB 443, which the state set up to allocate funding to rural sheriffs, which Lake County is one of, in the amount of $500,000 annually to help with law enforcement services in our rural communities. We've been, over the last couple years, in anticipation of getting the Armory project, and I was just notified today by the CAO that is finally done, like the ink is dry, finally. So we've known for years that this was coming up and this was going to be a pretty hefty project, so we've been kind of squirreling money out of the Rural Sheriff's Fund to help offset some of the costs for that. So that will hopefully help with that project.
When was that $500,000 number set? Is it a long time ago, or is it?
I don't think so. At least 15 years, my finance manager tells me, long before I got here.
With inflation, maybe they need to review.
They should. We should talk to our state legislature about that. Budget Unit 2207, Sheriff's Civil. Another function of the Sheriff's Office is to serve process of the court. We have a civil division that's staffed with a full-time deputy sheriff as well as a full-time law enforcement records technician. We recently purchased a new software program, a civil management software program, as the old system was a proprietary system and the owner of the system retired, making it unusable. So I think we have some expenditures from last year out of that to fund that Teleosoft software. We bought that last year, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And any questions on that?
No questions.
Sheriff Blood Alcohol, 2208. Sheriff's Office is required to pay for blood, breath, or urine analysis testing for DUIs in the unincorporated areas of Lake County, regardless of whether or not it's the Sheriff's Office or not that makes the arrest. And this is the funding that pays for those testings.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is it limited to only testing upon arrest, or is it possible to use that for like the UI checkpoints?
It's just simply for the testing, for the blood alcohol testing, for the lab fees. Budget Unit 2210, Sheriff STC. Per state law and BSCC regulations, every correctional deputy sheriff corrections is required to undergo basic Corps Academy training within the first year, and upon promotion, they're required to complete a supervisory course within 1 year. The deputy sheriff corrections also have an ongoing training mandate through the state where they're required to do continuing professional training. This fund pays for that training, and we seek reimbursement from the state when that training is in fact reimbursable.
Next.
Budget Unit 2212, Sheriff Automated Warrants. This is a fund that's set up that was, I'm not sure the exact source of the funding, but it was carved out to be used for a countywide automated warrant system. It sat largely unused for many, many years. Just this past year, we used some funding to set up an interface with the courts where we can track warrants directly with the courts over the computer system rather than the old system of actually having to hand print out the warrants, walk them over to the Sheriff's Department, put them in a file cabinet. It's a system that's accessible to all the law enforcement agencies within the county, and I was glad that we were able to finally find an appropriate use to spend this funding on for something that's actually going to be helpful and beneficial for the deputies on the street. Any questions on that?
Don't see any.
2213, the Sheriff's DNA Fund. This is a result of Prop 16.9. It's a fund that's set up to store, analyze, and test DNA evidence. We've used it on a couple of cases over the years. I think our most notable case recently was the solving of a cold case homicide using familial genealogy DNA testing on some remains that were found back in the 1970s. We were able to finally positively identify this person and return the remains to their family after he'd gone missing since, I think it was 1974 or 76. Any questions on that?
I don't see any.
2214 is sheriff asset forfeiture. This is the fund that holds our asset forfeiture money when we encounter people that are engaged in criminal activity and have a suspicion that the criminal activity has resulted in some sort of monetary gain, whether it's direct cash or whether it's tangible goods. We initiate a separate civil proceeding that's separate and apart from any criminal investigation to ask the courts to require them to forfeit monies. This is done under both an agreement with the state and the federal government for equitable sharing. When those types of things occur, by statute, any money that is seized is divided amongst the seizing agency as well as the district attorney's office and used for particular purposes. One interesting thing, a project that I'm working on that will eventually be brought to the board, is some of this money is supposed to be carved out to be used for youth gang prevention programs. We've never done that in this county. We've never expended any of that money, so it's just sitting there waiting to be used. My newly hired sheriff's assistant previously served for 7 different sheriffs in Sonoma County, and one of the tasks that she did when she was working down there was she organized the committee that was responsible for getting these funds out into the community to be used for their intended purposes. So that'll be something that I intend to bring to the board soon. If we can get some of this money out of that we've taken from people that are involved in illegal activity and get it into some programs that will be good for the youth in our county.
What's the balance of that account?
712,000.
That's the,
Well, it's a carryover, so it
Oh,
seems like it's a
okay.
balance.
Yeah.
okay.
And that was going to be my question is, not that I'm trying to compare you to the district attorney's asset forfeiture, but they have a reserve. Is there a reason why you don't put anything in reserve?
I don't know why they have a reserve.
I would suspect it's the same thing as you, where you've collected slowly. I don't think you collected in 1 year the 721,000, but it's not in a reserve versus just kind of floating and carry over from year to year.
I can't answer the questions on theirs, and it might be that their reserve is that carve out and that set aside for that gang reduction program.
Okay. I'm disappointed that you're expecting 0 this year.
I'm not expecting 0 this year. We say 0 because we don't know, but I'm confident we'll find some. Budget Unit 2215, the Sheriff Inmate Welfare Fund. The monies that are the revenue source for this is commissions off of phone calls, commissions off of commissary sales. The money goes right back to the inmates to provide for their educational or recreational opportunities. It initially funds some of those very same phone service programs to get the equipment installed. It also pays for a program officer whose job at the jail is to make sure that these programs that we have in place are made available to the inmates. The programs include the education program, the GED program, some of the substance abuse programs, anger management, and occasionally we'll have some vocational training programs as well. I think a discussion came up with somebody regarding the food service contract that's going to be coming up and whether or not there's any opportunities there. And we have had a successful food safety service. I know I'm messing up the wording on that, but basically the certification program that you need to be able to work in a food service industry that we provided for some of our,
Yeah, the
Safe
Serve
Serve,
Safe
yeah.
program.
yes.
I was actually going to ask if that money could be used for whatever portion with Trinity. I think we're moving to Trinity, right?
We're moving to,
We're moving from
Summit.
Trinity to Summit.
yes.
Just was curious if somebody goes through that program, since it's an educational, vocational thing, if the inmate welfare could maybe cover a portion.
Yes, I could. Yeah, absolutely could, yes. There's frequently legislative pushes to do away with the types of programs that fund these types of things, and there's simultaneously legislation that's going to, that makes the programs mandatory. So right now, this is an offset to the county general fund. We're able to pay for those programs because of our ability to charge commissions for phone calls, to charge a small commission on the commissary, which would be the food and drink refreshments extra items that they're able to purchase while they're in custody. But I'll just put that on the board's radar, that this is a budget that may not exist in some time. 2216, Sheriff Pool Vehicle Replacement, is our trust fund for our non-pursuit vehicles. That would be our office vehicles, our vehicles that aren't that aren't on patrol with the red lights and siren. Any questions on that? And the Sheriff Pursuit Vehicle Replacement, this is the same budget for our pursuit vehicles, the vehicles with lights and sirens. What I will share, and I'm sure I'm not the only department that's dealing with this, is the cost of vehicles seems to be skyrocketing. I think we went from last year purchasing pursuit vehicles, on average we paid about $37,000, and this year we're having to pay $48,000 for those same vehicles. The other challenges that we have is we also pay for the equipment out of this trust fund that goes in those vehicles. They don't come from the factory with cages. They don't come from the factory with the mounts for the radios and the sirens, the in-car computers, and the cameras. In years past, the industry standard for patrol vehicles was a Crown Victoria for I don't know how many years. They don't make Crown Victorias anymore. And what we're finding is that about every 3 to 5 years, which is about the life cycle of one of these vehicles, they do some design changes, which makes it impossible for us to transfer much of that equipment out of an old vehicle and put it in a new vehicle, which in turn results in us having to not only spend more for the vehicle, but we have to spend more for equipment that will fit. So those are some of the challenges that we expect to see. Long term, we're going to, I don't know what the answers are going to be with the switch to all electric vehicles in the state of California. I can't help but imagine that that's going to not be problematic at some state, particularly when we're in an area where we have disasters, when we have people that are going to be out deployed during disasters, sometimes for 12 or 14-hour shifts. What the life cycle of the battery is going to be and how that's going to impact us, as well as the infrastructure that's going to be needed at the sheriff's office, as well as the issues that are going to come with the take-home vehicle program that the county now offers, with employees using their own power to fuel, basically fuel the vehicles at home. So lots to consider with that. Fortunately, that's a little bit down the road, and we'll have plenty of time to have lots of discussions on that.
Well, hopefully they'll allow for hybrid so we could still use in case of those emergencies and no power, if it makes any sense.
I hope so. Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier.
Priuses from now on.
Yes. Yeah.
Quick question, just curious if you can get us a list of all your vehicles, just to kind of see where you are, what year, what mileage, just to get an idea of what your fleet looks like, just because that way we can expect what's to come.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
And some of those vehicles last a lot longer than others. Of course, the patrol vehicles that are driven daily generally don't last quite as long as some of our pool vehicles that are just driven for administrative purposes. 2218 Sheriff Search and Rescue. The funding source from this is either ongoing donations that we happen to receive, and the initial funding source, and I can never pronounce her last name, Mizuki. I don't want to botch her last name, but a lady whose husband was located, I believe rescued by Sheriff Search and Rescue some time ago, left a pretty significant endowment upon her death to the sheriff's office, and that's the funding source from this. It doesn't draw down from general fund. It's not self-funded. It just continues to exist. Any expenditures, my policy has been, if there's an expenditure request for some sort of equipment, which is typically a utility vehicle, something that they can use in off-road situations, equipment for the volunteers that serve in this program, those types of things. I lean very heavily on what the Search and Rescue Volunteer Board has to say on this. Any questions on that? 2220 is the Sheriff Post. As I mentioned earlier with the STC fund, Post is the regulatory authority in California that oversees 830.1A peace officers, which would be your patrol deputy sheriffs and detectives. This is the fund, the budget unit that provides for that training, and of course we also seek reimbursement for any reimbursable training that's available. Every deputy sheriff is required to undergo at least 24 hours of recognized certified training every 2 years, and a portion of that has to be in some specific disciplines. There's a perishable skills training for defensive tactics, for firearms, for tactical communications, and there's an additional training that's provided now for de-escalation as well. 2221, Sheriff's Local Law Enforcement Block Grant. We applied for this grant a couple years ago. This position, or this funds a part-time position in our evidence section, where there's a continuous effort to purge old evidence. It's not a matter of just looking at the date on something and deciding it's been around too long. There's quite a bit of research that has to go in to determine whether or not a particular piece of evidence can legally be disposed of. This person deals with found property, property that's held for safekeeping, evidence, and that relieves some of the burden of our full-time staff in the evidence room, and her position's paid for out of this. 2301 jail facilities. Last week we had 17 vacancies. As of this week we'll have 19 vacancies. We had a retirement and a resignation that are effective this week. And that's with the Deputy Sheriff Corrections. As you heard in the earlier presentation, the major project that we have, two major projects that we have going there out of 1785 are the generator install and the tower control upgrade. I won't bother you any more than I already have regarding my staffing woes out there. I've taken plenty of the board time talking about that, and I'll also take this opportunity again to thank you for your assistance in helping us find solutions in our staffing out there. One of the changes that we have out there, we've changed a law enforcement records technician position to a staff services analyst. When we talk about the programs deputy, we're also looking to have a position that's going to be similar with that staff services analyst in anticipation of the implementation of CalAIM, so that the staff services analyst will be coordinating some services. They'll also be coordinating some of the programs that we have available out there as well, and free up one of those deputy sheriff positions. Quite frankly, the records tech position went unfilled for many years, with there not being much interest in that position at the assigned pay scale. And the last thing that we have, I believe I spoke with one of the supervisors, or it might have been with the whole group, about the program that WellPath is contracted with the state to provide restoration of competency programs within certain jails within the state, hopefully to have all jails within the state covered. Currently we have, I believe, around 14 people that we're holding that are deemed incompetent to stand trial, rather than trying to send them out to the state hospitals, which is always difficult because they have limited bed space as well. The program will seek to provide those services here locally to either get them restored or make a determination that they're not going to be fit to stand trial at all.
Am I incorrect that Care Court is supposed to try and help with that?
There's I don't know what Care Court's function will be in that. I think Care Court's probably more designed to help people that may have mental health issues, substance abuse issues, homelessness issues, and try to get them steered in that direction. The incompetent to stand trial is where there's been a judicial determination that the person's not mentally fit. They don't understand court proceedings, which could be the case with somebody that would be eligible for Care Court services, but certainly not all of them.
Because I know I saw both presentations about the IFTs and the IFTs, I don't know if that's the correct, but incompetent to stand trial and Care Court all simultaneously, so I got this feeling that there might be some assistance to get people in a place and a state of mind that maybe that would get off of the incompetence to stand trial and be able to move on and move forward.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of crossover, but you also have the potential that you have somebody that's incompetent to stand trial that isn't experiencing homeless issues or substance, or just have just an organic disability or mental illness.
Right.
But yeah, I think there's very high likelihood there will be a lot of crossover in those programs.
And that's what that additional, I know we added 2 positions to the jail. Are both of those the mental health?
The 2 positions, I think there's a change from the proposed, or the preliminary budgets, and those positions are coming out of the CCP allocations, Community Corrections Partnership. Anything else in 2301?
No.
One update for the jail, effective yesterday, we've removed the mask mandate pursuant to guidance from CDPH out at the jail. So masks are not required. Of course, they're still optional and people want to wear them. We encourage them to do so, but I think that's, when you talk about the non-tangibles, I can't help but believe that's going to be one of those non-monetary things that might improve a little bit of morale out there. I can't imagine walking around for 12 hours with a mask on my face. Budget Unit 2704, as your board is aware, we've had finally some success in hiring some staff. We hired an emergency services manager by the name of Leah Saudelay after the retirement of our previous emergency services manager, Dale Carnathan. And then just a couple months ago, we hired her an emergency services specialist named Alma Perez, who's local to Lake County. Alma's finishing up her initial training, getting up to speed on all her ICS training, and they're also working with our public information officer on some outreach. They've been working on some outreach on fire preparedness, getting messaging out. They're also working on the hazard mitigation grant protocol that came to the board last week, I believe, to authorize establishment of a committee to get some public input and some guidance on what our hazard mitigation plan should look like. And they're also working with our partner cities to encourage updating of all of the EOPs within the county operational area. There's, I believe, some of the EOPs that are floating around out in the county are a little bit old and probably need to be brought up to date. So we're trying to make sure that all the entities that have an EOP have one that's fairly current. I believe, is that it? Is that all 21?
I don't know, did we do 2304 and 2305?
Where we got?
Yeah.
Not ours.
2304, wait, no, I'm sorry.
Says jail, medical, and
Oh, yeah.
criminal justice programs?
2304 is the health department.
Oh, okay. It says sheriff coroner in front of it for me, so.
I'll talk to you if you want.
Given it to us and we don't know.
I don't know.
Is it? Okay.
Any other questions on this?
You guys do something.
No, it's just incorrect on my thing. No worries. No, I don't have any further questions. I think the most important is to staff up and figure out how to get there. But I think, as we suggested yesterday, these are short-term fixes, and we need to look at more long-term solutions to make sure that we don't keep coming back every 6 months trying to figure out how to make that work.
Hey, I don't want to get on a pedestal. I'd be here for longer than I've been. I was hoping to get out of here quicker than an hour, and I think I'm on track, hopefully, to do that. But as I mentioned, I think it's societal. In speaking with one of the Highway Patrol administrators, they had a hiring event in Eureka last weekend where they had the entire Northern Division come up and do a presentation where they had the helicopter on display, the motor units out there. They had department representatives out there all ready to explain what it would be like. CHP has an effort to hire 1,000 Highway Patrol officers within the next year, and he informed me they had 9 people show up for a 5-hour presentation. So it's tough. It's not just us. It's and I think things will change. I think as the economy definitely has an impact not only on law enforcement but on government work in general. I think as the economy starts to level out, that will maybe, and as we come out of the pandemic, maybe they'll start pushing people. It's a rewarding career. It definitely is. It's certainly a rewarding and exciting career, and I think maybe we'll start to see some people turn towards law enforcement a little bit more in the future.
I don't see any other questions. Anyone from the public that has any questions on this budget item? I don't see anyone in the chambers that has a question, so I'll look online. And I don't see any hands up, so I'll bring it back to the board for action.
And I'll make a motion, but I hope that we have you coming back to us with a request for more of that force multiplier. Anything that can help because of your lack of staff, I think is absolutely necessary, and I'm sure that we haven't hit our plateau of the need of that technology. So hopefully that we can see that soon, because they need help out there.
Thank you.
I move to approve budget units 1785, 2201, 2202, 2203, 2204, 2205, 2206, 2207, 2208, 2210, 2212, 2213, 2214, 2215, 2216, 2217, 2218, 2220, 2221, 2301, and 2704 as presented.
With
We need to make
changes.
that adjustment.
With the adjustment to 1785, with 225,000 added to 63-13 in the appropriations, and 225,000 added to 81-22 in the revenues.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries.
So long ago.
Thank you.
Thank
Saying I
you.
talked a long time? Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So does anybody need a break, or we can continue on? Are we good? Just making sure? All right.
All right, next up is Public Works Administration, Budget Unit 1903. That can be found on page D57. And they are requesting a budget of $1,463,887. And I will turn it over to the department head, Scott DeLeon. Tried to hold it out long enough.
Sheriff got the seat nice and warm.
Ew.
He's been here for a while. And just a clarification, he stole Alma Perez from Water Resources.
Yep.
She's a wonderful employee. We're happy to see her have opportunity to grow and expand, so.
He's usually pretty excited about stealing employees from
Yes.
people in the county.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Scott DeLeon, Public Works and Water Resources Director. I'm here today with Alicia Ayala. She's our Deputy Director of Public Works in charge of administration. We're, between the two agencies, we have 18 primary, what I'm going to call primary budget units, and approximately 34 secondary budget units. I've prepared a thorough presentation of all 52 budget units. I'm kidding. What we're going to do is hit the highlights of this year's budget, including significant changes, project or goals of the various budget units of Public Works and Water Resources. And so we'll start with 1903 DPW admin. DPW admin has 10 full-time funded positions. I heard earlier there was some discussion about non-funded positions. We have a couple in this budget unit that are position allocations, and they are unfunded. I will tell you, you asked the department head at the time what kind of the reasoning for that, and I will tell you my reasoning for why I have unfunded positions. I use them largely for succession planning. I also am of the belief that once you have a position allocation in a budget unit, you don't want to let it go because sometimes you might not be able to get it back. And so for those two reasons, I like to, if I have a position that is unfunded or is not needed at the time, we will show it as unfunded. So that's the reason why. And you look at a few of the budget units that we have, and you'll see positions that are unfunded. It's, again, for those reasons, largely for succession planning. DPW admin is responsible for the overall administration of the entire department, to include all clerical, fiscal, and management functions. The revenue for this budget unit is derived from all the various budget units that utilize their services. So you will see in every other budget unit a contribution to DPW admin, and those are, that's the revenue for this budget unit. There aren't any significant changes to this budget unit. Our primary goal for this year will be the successful recruitment of an Assistant Director of Public Works. Any questions? Okay. I'll move on. 1908, Engineering and Inspection. We have 9 full-time positions. Again, if you look at that chart, there are some unfunded positions there. We have 3 vacancies in the division. The biggest change with this budget unit was the addition of the Deputy County Surveyor as a full-time position. That was a part-time position, and we promoted our technician to that position full-time. The change was appropriate due to the outstanding level of work being performed by the technician at that time. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to thank admin, but I'll take the opportunity right at this moment to thank admin for that. The surveyor positions are funded through the general fund, and so this was an additional ask of the general fund. It's working out very well, and we're doing very good work up there at the county surveyor's office. We also, when you've met him, we do have a full-time county surveyor, Vance Ricks. He has been with us now for a few months and is doing excellent work. 3011, Road Department. I'm sorry, did you have any questions on that?
I do. So the secure funding for various road improvement projects, what type of grants are you looking at for those projects to make sure that we can keep the goals that were set in the plan that you brought to us last spring?
So, and you're looking at
1908? It says goals for 2022.
Right. So staff pursues just about every state and federal grant opportunity that we feel will fit. In fact, we just submitted last week 3 applications for state funding through the HSIP program, Highway Safety Improvement Plan program. And so we could be here for a while if I tried to list every grant opportunity that we chase. We went after and secured funding through Congressman Thompson's office when they requested, do you have any projects that we can ask for? And we had a project in Kelseyville that we submitted, and it ultimately was approved. So that's what that bullet is for. That's what that goal is to chase every opportunity for funding. So anytime we work with the APC, we ask them to be on lookout for any funding opportunity, and so that's what that bullet is. It's looking at every federal and state opportunity. And yes, if we can fit a project that we've identified as in our pavement rehabilitation plan, we will certainly put that in there. Unfortunately, most grant programs are for specific or systemic projects. They aren't for deferred maintenance or making improvements because of deferred maintenance. So funding for just general maintenance or rehabilitation, those types of projects are generally not eligible. They're largely just project specific. And in fact, the HSIP projects that we applied for last week are all either specific project sites or systemic projects.
Okay. And I guess it might be a different budget unit to talk more about the roads and the road projects.
It's coming up in the very next one.
Yeah, so I'll save my question for that. But what's the timeline for the Socrates Mine Road project to be completed?
So just had a conversation with the consultant on that. They've combined the two slides into one construction project. We have some draft plans and specifications for that I'm reviewing. We intend to put that project out to bid, or out to bid this fall and for construction next spring.
Okay, that was a big question at the geothermal meeting.
It's always a big question. It has been since it happened.
Yeah. Yes.
So a quick question. So yes, you have 3 unfunded, so that leaves you really with 9 personnel total. Right now, it shows 12 when it comes to HR because it counts the unfunded. But that's still very close to 50% of the total because right now it shows 5 filled. What is your current efforts to fill those in, and how much is that kind of slowing down the ability to get, because in our 5-year plan, we want to be aggressive. And I'm certain that having a lack of engineers in the staff is going to be make it more difficult to be as aggressive as maybe we want to be. What are the current efforts being made to try to fill those positions, and do we need to have a further discussion about that?
So we have had a position open for the principal civil engineer, which is the manager of the engineering and inspection division. It's been open for some time. We initially were going to hire a consultant to do a combined recruitment for assistant director and principal civil engineer. We decided to just pursue the assistant director at this time with the belief that we'll be successful. And because the principal engineer and the assistant civil, or the principal engineer and the assistant director work so closely together, we were hopeful that we'll then do a recruitment for the principal with the new assistant director. So that's kind of the plan for that position. We have interviewed and offered positions over the past year. I've had at least 3 people go through the entire process, accept the position, and then decline it. And I have a local young man that has a civil engineering degree, just recently graduated from Sacramento, and he is, he's cleared, he's going to start. We're just working on a start date with him, and we're very excited. We've got a local person with an engineering degree, and we're excited to add that person to the staff as an assistant engineer. And with respect to the pavement plan, or the pavement rehabilitation plan, and the construction plans for that, my plan for that, because you're right, we don't have the capacity to do that, is to bring in consultants for that. And we're working on using the City of Clear Lake's recent RFP for engineering services to kind of piggyback off of that competitive process to bring in some consultants.
So, to bring in consultants, so it wouldn't be using Dave Schwartz or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Yeah, because I worry about that, because I want to see it getting done, but if we don't have the capacity to get it done, then it's hard to set those expectations.
Right.
I have another capacity question, and we're having our weekly meetings on dealing with the trees and the right-of-ways, and so I'm not sure which of these units that, because you're going to need to contract that out too, right? Isn't that what we've been talking about? So you've got your RFP. So I just wanted the rest of the board to understand that impact on your department right now as we move forward with that giant project.
Yeah, well, right now that impacts on me.
Right.
And so, which is why I'm really working hard to get a consultant.
Yeah.
So all we have to do is administer a contract and let the consultant handle that plan. But yeah, there will be some oversight.
Yeah, but then also maybe that assistant too could help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right. 3011, the road department. We have 34 full-time positions in this budget unit. As of today, we have 12 vacancies. We the road department's responsible for protecting and maintaining 613 centerline miles of road, 125 bridges and thousands of drainage culverts. And though this is the largest individual budget in the department, the majority of the funding and the appropriations are for specific projects with specific non-discretionary funding sources. One of the primary goals for the budget is the implementation of the pavement rehabilitation plan, and we have allocated $6.4 million for the first year of that plan. And we took advantage, we talk about funding, we took advantage of some special federal funding. It was the Coronavirus Response and Relief Fund. I know I'm getting the acronym wrong. CRRSSA, I think, was the acronym. We had an opportunity to secure some funding through that for a new chip cart for chip sealing. We have a 1990 Etnire chip cart. We completed our chip seal program this year with baling wire and that thing, it's on its last legs, and so this funding came in just at the right time. The road department will cover the balance. It's not enough to cover the full cost of the chip cart, but the road department will pick up the balance. And we're working with Caltrans right now to do all the paperwork in order to get those funds released and available to us to purchase that cart. And should we be fortunate to have your board's approval of our budget today, I will be contacting the supplier of the chip cart to pull the trigger on that purchase. So we're excited about that. Any questions? I know you had some questions about the payment plan. So 3011 is where the funding for the pavement projects is located.
And when you had that presentation, looking out at the, I think, years 2 through 5, we don't have the funding for that. And so, what are we doing proactively to fill that gap?
So the quick answer is we're probably going to need to extend the time. We had hoped for this to be a 5-year plan. It's probably going to need to be a 10-year plan. The other thing, and I still need to bring back to your board the final plan, it's in flux. It's moving all the time. One of the things I want to do is change around some of the time. Cobb Mountain, for example, was in year 5. Personally, and I'm not
going to make it 5 years.
Yeah, those roads aren't going to make it another 5 years. Yeah. So we need to modify and adjust the timing. I also have PG&E tearing my roads up and putting stuff in underground, and I'm having to work with them, or trying to work with them, to get their plan. That has not been easy, because frankly, I don't know if they have a 5-year plan. I know what they want to do, or they know what they want to do, but we're having difficulty trying to coordinate that.
It is difficult when they're not telling us until the week before they start the project.
Right. So all of these things are contributing to the reason why I haven't come back with that final plan, because I'm still balancing it and still moving it and trying to make it realistic to where we can afford it.
And not to mention some of the areas when we looked at it in different either town halls or presentations, some of the areas are like, because of the consultant put those on there, so they're not really even part of it, so you'll be able to.
There are roads that probably don't need to be on there, roads that we could handle in-house don't need to be on that. And they're really low volume roads and they skipped roads that have a lot more cars on them that really need to be on that plan. So yes, we're balancing all of that. I'm balancing all that.
Supervisor Spatier?
Yeah, just made me think when you were talking about PG&E, what's our status of our franchise fee? If they're giving us more problems on our roads, is there maybe a chance to review the franchise fee agreement that we have with them? When's
I'll
the
have
last?
to check with
when-
county council on
When's
that.
the last time we reviewed that?
We haven't, since I've been the director.
Yeah, that might be an opportunity to kind of, I don't know.
I'll make a note and I'll ask county council.
Okay, because I know we probably have some of those franchise fee agreements also with CNS Waste Solutions and others like that. It would be, I haven't seen any of those things come back up, at least since I've been on the board for the last 4 years. So I don't know enough to say what they actually contribute and what the actual agreement is, but typically it's based on the usage of the infrastructure that they're on to try and be able to maintain the wear and tear.
And generally, with those agreements, if it's a project, if it's a project that they are initiating, that they need to do, you know, they have to comply with our standards. So that's, we've been working with them on the trenching and when it's a project that we have that, and they are in the way, we have to provide them notice and they need to move. And there's a lot of nuances on who pays for what. But we'll need to look at that, and we've made a note to talk to county council.
They basically set the stage for how the collaboration works.
Yes.
And then my next question is, it's been a while since I've seen it. I think it's been since Clear Lake Oaks Sidewalk Project, CDBG. I know it's kind of a four-letter word for some people. It's a difficult reporting system, but at the same time, it's typically a pretty large and hefty potential grant that can come to the county. Is that also one of those options that is available to us? And also HCD. I know that HCD now started receiving what I believe is FEMA dollars, and the city of Clear Lake utilized that for the last, I think they did 12 or 15 miles for the sulfur fire recovery. And that was from 2017. So I'm wondering, is there a 2018 fire recovery fund that we might be able to access, maybe also through HCD? So those are things I would like to see connected to when you bring us back the 5-year plan, because I think that would increase our revenues a whole lot so we don't have to use it. And my last thing is, because you have so much carryover, what's the chance of using that carryover to leverage matching fund grants that are out there where we put down 20%, 25%, and the rest is provided to us? It's a lot harder if we don't have a large amount to be able to play with. So I think we have an opportunity to play with what we have versus just use what we have.
You're right.
To really increase that capacity.
And as long as it's an eligible expense for gas tax, because that's all, that carryover that you see is SB1 and gas tax.
Yeah, so typically like collector arterials
It's gotta
versus
be-
like
It's got to be
residential.
county road, it's got to be county public road.
Yeah.
County maintained road related. But yes, those are all options. The key to that 5-year plan and having the construction plans completed for all of those, that's the key to leverage those types of funds. They rarely will pay for preliminary engineering or environmental work or right-of-way acquisition. Those funding sources are looking for, and I hate the term shovel-ready, but they are looking for projects that are ready to go to construction. And having those plans would make us eligible for things like that.
Okay. Backing up just a little bit, your engineers, do they have the potential for incentive pay?
Yes. Yep. That's one of the classifications on that incentive pay, engineers. Yes.
One of the other things that we talked about a couple weeks ago with Will Evans from Clerk is looking at one of the CAL FIRE grants for a veg crew to do the right-of-way clearing because we're so far behind on that work. And I think that those grants are going to be announced in October. So definitely something that we need to look at for a multi-year program.
Yep. Yep. No, we're waiting to see that come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We're waiting to see that announcement.
And then did you order that masticating head yet?
Not yet.
or not?
We're getting prices on it.
Okay, awesome.
I'm thinking in my mind, when are we receiving these things when we order it? Because everyone seems to be in back order or supply chain issues, so hopefully we get all those things sooner than later.
We're going to talk about that, and I heard the sheriff talk about it, and I'm going to echo a couple of things that he said in later budget units, but we're experiencing the same problems. I'll move on to 3122, which is Lamson Airport. The biggest change with this budget unit is we separated the right-of-way agent / airport operations coordinator position, which used to be a single position. We've been recruiting for that for some time, and as you can imagine, it's a very peculiar and unique skill set, right-of-way agent and an airport coordinator, and it ended up that way over time because the individual that was in that position for almost 20 years, it just through the reclassification process, that position morphed into this unique position. Well, we've separated those, and we've created an extra help airport operations coordinator position. Again, a shout out to admin for assistance with that, and we're confident that that's going to make the recruitment for both of those positions actually a little easier. And we've already received some interest in the airport coordinator position, and we'll be starting that recruitment as soon as everything's been approved. For 3123, Lamson Airport capital projects, we have a new consultant working with us on capital projects, and they are working on the development of plans for the next phase of improvements out at the airport, which is pavement rehabilitation for the parking area. If you recall, we did the runway and taxiway a couple summers ago, and so the next big project would be the parking area. Between the submittal of our preliminary budget and today, we became aware, and again, it's through our new consultant, we became aware of a new federal funding opportunity through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the bill funds. And in order to take advantage of that funding, we need to do some engineering, some preliminary engineering for the development of some plans. Because the airport is largely funded through FAA entitlements, it gets really, really messy if you try to change your airport capital improvement plan and put, because the project we want to do is hangar development. Well, that is not a high priority project with the FAA. And so even if we tried to change our capital improvement plan to this hangar development, they probably wouldn't accept it. And so the only way we can really take advantage of this bill funding is to do the engineering in-house, or have our consultant do the engineering and have the plans, the preliminary environmental, everything wrapped up, and do that in-house. And then we would be able to take advantage of this other federal funding, which is kind of outside of the FAA. So we made a special request of special funding from admin of $100,000 for that engineering, and that has been included in this budget unit. And by completing the engineering with the local funds, if we hold off and utilize the full measure of those bill funds, it's nearly $1 million. They're $159,000 per year, starting in 2022, and they sunset in 2027. So we would be able to, if we waited until 2027 for the project, we'd be able to take advantage of almost $1 million worth of funding through this infrastructure law. We probably won't wait that long, but the point is by relatively small investment in the preliminary engineering, we'll be able to take advantage of these bill funds, where otherwise we would not be able to. So again, very appreciative of admin's assistance with that. Any questions regarding Lamson? Okay?
Just a
yeah.
quick question. Parking lot is for where the airplanes are parking?
Yes.
I hope that we can review the cost of parking once we give them a new place to park.
Those costs, we escalate those, and you'll probably see that in the next fee schedule increase. You'll see those increase.
Is it still $5?
I think is it 5? Or
And 5 for single and 7.50.
Yeah, because I can't park my car in a parking garage for less than maybe $5 an hour,
Right.
let alone $5 a day in an airport.
The next item is 9905, ISF Central Garage. We have 5 full-time positions with this budget unit and 1 vacancy. This budget unit is responsible for the operation of the county fleet, which contains 132 total vehicles. We've talked about this before. We're in the middle of a trial period where we're utilizing leases for a number of vehicles. I think we have 11 or 12 vehicles in this lease program. We're still kind of at the beginning of this. We are just now starting to return vehicles at the end of the lease, and we need to go through that several times. We need a lot more experience with returning vehicles before we can really make some conclusions or draw some conclusions about the efficacy of this lease program. I can tell you that we're finding some trends with the lease vehicles. They tend to be a little more expensive than a vehicle per month than a vehicle that was purchased and put into the fleet, largely because of the monthly lease fee. So we charge the operation rate and then a rate to cover the lease fee, and we're finding that that's a lot more expensive than had we just charged the replacement and operation. One of the benefits to the lease is there's no upfront cost. So a department, if they really needed a vehicle, we could get one for them at no cost upfront, but they're going to pay more per month. Is basically the summary of where we're at right now. As the sheriff indicated, we are seeing much higher costs for vehicles, both in operation, as you can imagine, the fuel costs, with the price of fuel has gone up, and frankly, everything's gone up. Oil, other parts has all gone up, and then, of course, the cost of the vehicles has gone up. As a result, we increased the monthly mileage rates 2 cents per mile for both operation and replacement. So all the vehicles that are currently in the fleet and assigned to other departments, they're going to be paying 2 cents a mile more for operations and replacement. We are looking at a number of hybrid vehicle options. We intend to replace 9 vehicles this year that are in the fleet. We are looking at hybrid. We have not gone to full electric just yet for a couple of reasons: cost and lack of infrastructure to support that. However, we have been working with Public Services and PG&E. We sat in on a meeting with PG&E a couple months ago about potential funding opportunities for infrastructure for electric vehicles. And unfortunately, at this time, there just really isn't anything that is usable or that we're qualified for. But we'll continue to work with both Public Services and PG&E to try to get that infrastructure in place. Obviously, that's the direction our state is going based on some of the actions that our governor has taken, so we need to do that, but we need the infrastructure to be able to utilize those vehicles. Any questions regarding Central Garage?
Just comment on the governor's budget this year. I know that he did put some funds in there, obviously, to help with those, that electrification, building out that capacity for it. So I don't think anything's coming out yet, but also look at the state budget and opportunities there.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Absolutely. I had the same question for Sheriff Martin. I'd love to get a list of what is the vehicle pool look like, what year, mileage, just to kind of get an idea of where we are. That way, again, we can expect what needs to change and what needs to happen, and when we can start seeing some of those transitions towards more hybrid or electric, or eventually potentially hydrogen, who knows? There's all kinds of renewable things that are going to be coming out for us.
We can get
so.
that, we can get that for you. That's pretty easily
And,
done.
and maybe you can help me, but I think it's the sheriff, yourself, and social services are the three fleet people, or is there another?
No, those are the largest. I mean, we have a number of vehicles in, yes, for the fleets, the departments that are managing their own, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And I appreciate the info also on the enterprise contract. That is something that sounds good until you really see it on paper. It doesn't sound like it's not working, but it doesn't sound like it's the savings that maybe we anticipated to see.
And the vehicles are not available even through them. We still have issues.
They have the same struggles?
We have the same struggles. And in fact, we have vehicles that they're allowing us to keep for extended periods because they don't have a vehicle to replace it. So we're struggling with that. We had a vehicle last year that we purchased through the state bid. We ordered it through a dealer in Sacramento. The dealer got the vehicle and decided that he didn't want to give it to us because they could sell it for so much more money off of the lot than they were going to get by going through the state contract. And so they ended up keeping the vehicle and selling it. And they said, well, we'll order you another one, but we don't know when it'll get here. So those are the kinds of things that we're dealing with. It's pretty frustrating.
And then my last question is staffing-wise. I know you've been trying to hire a heavy equipment operator for quite some time. And obviously, any change towards a more electrified fleet is going to change the type of operations of what's going on in the central garage. Skill sets will need to change as well. How much is that hurting you from having that lack of the heavy operator, and what's the expected change as far as what you need to continue with whatever new vehicles?
Yeah, I think you meant a mechanic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not operator.
It hasn't really hurt us to a degree. Our folks are well-trained. They are capable of all of the vehicles that we have. I'm going to presume that training, additional training for different types of vehicles will be made available. We have had hybrid vehicles in the fleet before, so it's not something that's completely out of the ordinary. We obviously have not had any electric vehicles, and that could prove to be.
It's an empty hood.
Yeah, yeah. And it may result in, for those vehicles, we just have to send them to the supplier or to the dealer to do the maintenance. Okay?
Looks like we have a question from someone online. If you can unmute, and Elizabeth Larson, if you'd like to unmute. Hello? I'm not sure if, we can't hear you if you're unmuted. There there you go.
Maybe put her question in chat.
Yeah, maybe write in chat, or once we get to finishing fleet maintenance, we'll come back and she can probably identify the budget item that she's asking a question about. Actually, there's another, I think Betsy Kahn just put her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out that at least on the participatory access I have, chat is disabled.
Okay. the chat is this. All right, thank you. I don't know if we can address that, but the chat apparently. And Elizabeth, I still see your hand up, so I don't know if you heard what I said, if we could just get to the.
The chat is disabled because we're on the webinar Zoom, and you have to be brought into the panel in order for the chat to work for you.
All right.
So, Chairman Crandall, I was able to enable the chat for members of the public to chat with hosts and panelists only.
Okay.
So you can receive a question from Elizabeth Larson, but you'll still need to read out the question.
Okay. And so we'll continue forward, and then when we get to the end, we'll see if the microphone works. So we'll go from
Okay.
there. Go ahead.
So I'm going to move on to water resources. That department has 9 full-time employees with 1 current vacancy. We have 15 extra help employees in our Quagga Mussel program, and there's 1 vacancy in that program. The majority of our significant projects and programs reside in Budget Unit 8109, and I will get to that, but I'm going to just highlight some of the other budget units before we get to that. We have 4 flood zones around the county, and I'm not going to talk about each one of them, but collectively, they all have unique challenges with revenues and performance of maintenance. Between funding shortfalls and increasingly onerous permitting processes, we face challenges with performing the necessary maintenance in every one of these zones. Chairman Crandall, you're experiencing some of the impacts of that with the drainage facilities around the town of Upper Lake, where we're seeing gravel accumulation and vegetation growth, which results in reduced capacity of those channels. That reduced capacity has the potential to impact the community, and the community is rightly concerned. We will continue to work with the various agencies on permitting and pursue outside funding opportunities whenever possible to work through these issues. We've made it through another budget with the 4 budget units for the flood zones. It's 8101, 8104, 8105, and 8108. But I've been speaking with Deputy Director Delagianis, and we both agree that we need to plan on bringing an item to your board in the near future to discuss some of the various options and issues that we're having with these budget units. Each one of them is unique, and each one of them has some issues. And so, again, we've made it through this budget unit, or this budget prep for this year, but we'll bring an item to you in the near future. With that, I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into 8109. That is the Watershed Protection District budget. 5 of the top priority projects in the district, or that the district's responsible for, are within this budget unit. And that's, I'm not going to suggest that the other projects and programs that we work on isn't important, but these 5 are the ones that have the most impact, and they impact the greatest number of people. And those projects are the Quagga Mussel Prevention Program, the Middle Creek Restoration Project, our stormwater/water quality programs, the National Flood Insurance Program, and the Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan. We could have meetings, we'd spend the rest of the day on each one of those projects, but what I would like to do is just highlight some of the things that occurred. Staff was successful in obtaining state and federal grant funds to continue providing ramp monitors at the various public ramps for our Quagga Mussel Prevention Program. These folks are the ambassadors of our program. They're responsible for the public outreach. They're the ones that have the day-to-day interaction with the boaters, and they help boaters, or help educate boaters about how they are the ones that are going to help keep invasive species out of our lake. They do amazing work, and if you if you've ever had a chance to go down to a boat ramp and watch our ramp monitors interact with the public, you'll see what I mean, that they are the ambassadors of our program and they represent the county very well. This program also funds, on occasion, quagga dogs, a canine that comes in and has been trained to smell for quagga mussels. And so during high weekends or holiday weekends, we bring those quagga sniffing dogs in, and they're really fun to watch. And they just, again, are great ambassadors for our program. We continue to work with our consultants on the purchase of properties for the Middle Creek project. And this past year, we made some good progress on property acquisition. I have some excellent news that I'm excited to share today. I just learned this, that our grant funds for property acquisition, the timeline was extended to 2028.
2028,
Yes,
That's great
Amazing.
news.
2028.
because
So-
the previous deadline was June of 2023.
Right.
Awesome.
So they've given us another 5 years. So again, very, very excited to share that news today.
Thank you.
Great news.
We recently completed the documentation necessary for the National Flood Insurance Community Rating System recertification. I forwarded you all some emails about that. We were successful in retaining our rating of 7 with our CRS program, and that affords folks in Lake County a 15% rebate on their flood insurance policy. So again, great work by the staff on that. And then finally, as you're all aware, the staff and the consultant completed the Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan. Do you have any questions regarding 8109?
Yeah, I have a quick question. The 14 million, or, sorry, 15.377 million in intergovernment revenues, is that Middle Creek Restoration Funds? Is that Sigma funds? Is it just kind of a bunch of different funds, or just one? Because I thought we spent more money than that.
That is the quagga, or the grant for the Middle Creek project.
Okay.
Yep.
And
And we probably have, it's just, things haven't hit, they just haven't hit, it's just a timing thing.
And then my last question for this one is reimbursements. I know that we've had to front you some money. Actually, yeah, I think you fronted yourself some money from your reserves because the state was taking so long to repay. Has that been collected and
Yes.
reconciled?
A few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yes, so we did
Took some
receive.
time, but at least we get
did
it done.
receive payment from the state for those invoices, so yes.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you covered everything because you're on 8109, or are you going back to the
No,
other ones?
that's going to conclude my planned presentation, but we'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
So there's a couple online, but I'll just ask mine briefly. And I know we've talked about this, but I just want to be able to speak to it. In the 8108 budget, and this is the Zone 8 Upper Lake Middle Creek Basin. There's a lot of questions about the tax collection that comes forward to it, and I see here that there's, last year there was 66,818, and now this year there's 85,470, and each year there's a specific amount allocated to conduct vegetation management, and that in essence takes care of half of that assessed tax collection. Am I correct on that? Or does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, the effort on the levies changes from year to year depending on what project and what is happening. We don't say we're going to use half of it. We use whatever is necessary to perform that level of work.
Oh, okay, so it's just like based upon that year?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so actually that basically answers my question on that. I know too that working on something coming forward in the future about starting to get a plan together in that area, and I know that's grant funded, if that makes any sense. I think that's what I've noticed. So I just wanted to confirm that comes from a grant. Yeah.
Yes, so under revenues, for that same budget unit, under intergovernment revenues, I believe that $160,000 is the feasibility study grant.
Okay, and so and then that feasibility study will give us the opportunity to start budgeting for future projects or whatever comes from that feasibility study.
Yes.
Okay.
And you mentioned the elimination of reserves. In that action that you took a few weeks ago to provide the department some interim funding while we were waiting on those other funds, one of the things that you approved was the use of some money to hire the consultant to prepare some preliminary plans for a project to remove gravel and the vegetation out of the creek channel. We need those plans for a number of reasons. Number one, you need that to be able to define the scope of the project. We need to know how many yards of material are we pulling out, how many yards, what is the scope of the project, and preliminary costs for that as well. We'll use those plans to begin the negotiations with the state on the types of permits that are going to be necessary and the environmental clearances that'll be necessary for that project. So your board approved that, and we'll be bringing you the amendment, and I actually think it's on next Tuesday's agenda for the amendment with Peterson Brustad to prepare those plans.
All right. Thank you for that. And there is 2 questions, unless someone else has something on public input.
Go for it. I have questions, but I'll wait till you're
sure?
done. Yeah, go for it.
So the first question, I'll read it from Elizabeth Larson. My questions are about the Lakeside Heights project. I see it's listed on the construction projects for $3,370,000. Do you have a timeline for when this might take place? And is the gabion wall that was proposed previously? Also, I didn't see any ramp extensions in the budget. Are there any plans to pursue such projects at the various public and park ramps managed by the county? And then also, I don't see anything in this year's budget for levee improvement in the Upper Lake area. Will that be budgeted for next year once the feasibility study alternatives are fully reviewed and final alternatives are selected?
So the approximate timing for the Lakeside Heights project is next summer. We have a consultant that's preparing the plans, and we're working with Caltrans on the funding and that whole process of environmental clearance, and so that project is tentatively scheduled for next construction season. The bin wall, she questioned the bin wall, and I guess the short answer is no. There have been some modifications to the design, and it still involves a wall, but it's a little different style of wall, and it's in a different location. But that project's tentatively scheduled for next construction season. She asked about ramp extensions. Water Resources doesn't manage any ramps. So the funding for any types of projects like that would not be in our budget units. It'd either be in, probably in the Parks Department and Public Services. We've been working on environmental clearances. I have been working on environmental clearances, trying to pave the way for a potential project to extend the ramps. But we haven't provided any funding or set aside any funding for any construction. What's the other question?
The last one was, I'll read it again.
Levies?
Yes.
Levies,
Is there
yes.
anything in the budget for that? She don't see anything in the budget for that. Will it be budgeted next year once the feasibility studies alternatives are fully?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Supervisor Sabatier? And I'll close public input since that's the last question.
Yeah, my question is on your revenues. just looking historically, in 2018, 19, you were collecting about 800,000. Now granted, I don't have the details, that there was some transfers from other places, but it kind of 800,000, 740,000, 913,000, and then it just took a huge dip, and now it's at approximately 150,000 for your revenues.
Which budget unit, sir?
Oh, I'm so sorry, we're talking about all of them. 8107, Water Resources Admin. Like historically, it was much higher than what we're looking at least in the last 2 years, because even last year's estimate is in the negatives. So obviously, there was some transfers going on. Just kind of curious what changed.
Okay, do you have that? So, yeah,
I can.
that's
answer
a
that.
change in the accounting philosophies with admin. It's reflected as in an 80/80 charge. So instead of seeing it as a revenue, it's actually a reduction in expenses.
Correct. And you use that method when it's a 100% benefit to what's coming over.
And so that would be the 1.6 at the bottom?
Correct.
Gotcha.
In prior years, it would be up in it would have been up in revenues, which would
And where are those revenues coming from, the 80/80?
those should be from their other budget units.
Okay.
I say
Okay.
should be because I'm not 100% sure, but 99.
My hope was to maybe find some money, because I know that you and I have been having the conversation, and we'll continue to have the conversation, but I know that we're spending approximately $250,000, I believe, every single year for aquatic weeds, where there's the harvesting or the spraying, and we're not spending any money, maybe not any money, but we're spending very little money on the algae. We have historically attempted to fix the algae and deal with the algae. Unfortunately, nothing has shown to work. And in the history that you sent me, I believe it was somewhere around in the range of 400,000 or 500,000 since the 70s that we've spent trying to figure out the algae. And so over the course of the last 10 years, we've spent at least $2 million for our aquatic weeds, which typically impacts the upper arm of the lake. And the lower arms continue to have this struggle of dealing with the algae. And so I hope that we can find a solution, number one, because putting money into something that doesn't solve the solution is useless, but that we can also find a way to provide that respite to the southern arms, such as Clear Lake Oaks and Clear Lake, because that algae, especially during drought seasons, is pretty gnarly.
Yeah. Could I just make one comment, and I'm not, I'd like to offer that though the weed spray program at the north and west end of the lake, the direct benefit of that spray is certainly for boats and boaters coming in and out of ramps and whatnot at the west end of the lake. It has an indirect benefit for everyone, and that is by eliminating those aquatic weeds and reducing the amount of fragmentation that is occurring as boats chop the weeds up. Those weeds spread with the winds, and they spread all over the lake, and so I'd like to say there's an indirect benefit to the whole lake by reducing the weeds at the west end and reducing the boats chopping them up, and yeah, it's not direct. You certainly don't see it like you do when you go out to the water here and after the weed spray and the weeds are gone. You don't see that, but again, I think there's an indirect benefit.
And not trying to take away, just looking for ways to make that possible down south.
And I don't disagree. Yeah.
All right,
And I think there's some things in our conversations that we've had. There's some really interesting technologies that I'm hopeful we can bring here and see if they'll work.
And there may be ways to get some grant funding for it too, so hopefully we can find the funding for it.
We have like 2 minutes for your next meeting and hard stop. So with that, there's not any more, what's that, Steve?
I've got to ask for one change before you guys approve real quick before the AVA meeting. So Budget Unit 1920, the auditor's office is going to lower their 8123, which is transfer into roads, the 1.4 million from the PG&E settlement. It needs to be adjusted in 3011 as well to bring it down from the amount that was already brought in last fiscal year. So 8122 for budget unit 3011 needs to go down by 423,927, so less revenue coming in because it was received last fiscal year.
Was this 343?
423,927.
423, not even close.
And then I assume, I'm looking over at Alicia, would we lower 5355 by that same amount, and then you can budget transfer around if that ends up being incorrect?
Yeah.
So 5355 would be lowered by the same amount.
Where's 5355? Oh, because you're giving us the code 8122, but which budget?
Oh, budget unit 3011.
3011.
Roads.
Gotcha.
And it's the 1.4 million PG&E grant that we were moving over from.
And that's basically the adjustment based on the actual cost. Now
That has already happened last year.
Yeah. Oh, I've driven on it. I've seen it.
That's it.
All right, so we're just looking for action?
Okay. I'm looking at Johanna. Do you want two different motions? Do them all at once? Okay.
No, I said it's all public works.
It was an agreeance. So I move to approve budget units 1903, 1908, 3011, 3062 through
3011 as amended?
Oh, sorry, 3011 as amended with 8122, $423,927, 5355 at $423,927, 3062 through 3081, 3122, 3123, 8463, 8464 through 8472, 8483 through 8492, 9905, 9907, 9908, 9909, and 9911. Oh, I wanted to stop. And 162 through 1674, 1672 through 1674, 8101, 8104, 8105, 8107 through 8109.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are going to take a break for a half hour and come back after that break.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.